to be me, so I may as well be me, right?
That,
Yeah.
Brian, what you just said sounded exactly like what my sisters would say to me. Much to our dismay, be yourself.
Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Up there, we see Peter. Oh, Banjo Pilot's there. Douglas, we haven't seen you in a little while. At least, you know.
I think it
The
was there
problem with
last
seeing the
week.
names is I have to remember what the. Yeah, you're right. I have to remember as we're doing the show who the names were that were in there. So it's really easy for me to forget that we saw somebody's name scroll past
Right.
because we're not keeping very strict attendance, I guess is what I'm saying.
I'm trying to keep less and less attention on the chat because I think RH and AG have gotten in my head
In so many ways.
in so many
Yeah.
ways.
Well, look,
Yeah.
look, it's I just love that your mistake caused two different podcasts to, at least that I know of, two podcasts to goof up intentionally their closing.
Yeah.
And I love that people think that you were just doing it as a gag. And it's really just born out of actual confusion about like
Wow,
Like it
that was
noted
so
for the
good. It was
record
like,
99% of the things that I do that maybe sound like a gag are completely done by accident. I'm not that smart or funny.
they always say, if you're, in music, they always say, if you're playing a show, if you're playing a live performance and you make a mistake, they say to play the wrong note again.
yes.
Right. Just own it.
And
But-
yes, Flint, we were looking for good background color, and that's our kind of official color. So we just kind of like scrambled and put something up.
In the very slight attention we put to the aesthetic of this live stream. Can you tell that we're not all in the same room?
Yeah, every color is different.
I love that I'm the only one. I need an on-air sign.
Yeah.
We can make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where would it go? It would go. Was that on? Oh wait, it would be over here.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I got a spot for it.
I think we can make something happen.
Yeah.
Mine will be an oil lamp, like
Oh, how
Ben's.
about this?
Yeah. Yeah, Bearded. I was glad to send those out. You like my little label that's like, this is a form letter. I write your name on the top of it because it's like when you're sending out the stickers, I'm just not going to handwrite notes out to them. So,
well, what I'm amazed is that you sent something to Bearded Aviator and the corrections people didn't already take all that stuff out.
They let him keep it all. Anyone else see a ridiculous similarity between Brian and Billy Joe Armstrong? I love that.
Wow.
The Green Day guy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there something you want to tell us? Can you put a little black eyeliner on or like shadow and let us get the real look?
Oh, let me take my shirt off. Hold on.
Yeah. We've been, or I've been trying to send out a notice every week before the show so that people know the time of the live stream. So if you're not in Discord and you don't happen to see it on YouTube, there's a way to get it. So I'm glad you noticed that. Yeah.
Let's do
All right,
it.
fellas, y'all ready to kick this thing off?
Let's go.
Yeah.
Midlife Pilot Podcast. What is it like to become a pilot in midlife? The challenges are unique, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello and welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Whether you're a seasoned pilot, training for a rating, or just even thinking about getting started in aviation, we like to think of the podcast as your aviation companion and your weekly dose of aviation inspiration. This is episode 103, Finding Time to Fly. My name is Ben. I am a instrument-rated pilot with a commercial certificate. I'm based in the metro Atlanta area. I fly a Cessna 182. We like to call the Beast, at least I do. Joining me tonight, as always, from the Bachelorette Super Charlie, Nashville, Tennessee, a private pilot flying a Cherokee 180. We like to call Lucy. Hello, sir, Brian Siskin.
Hey, how is it going? It's been so long since I've seen you. It's been what, like a half a day or something. I'm sorry you've had to have my company yesterday, but it's good to see you again.
Great to see you as well. Had a great time. We'll get into that in a minute. Also joining us from the West Coast, our sport pilot extraordinaire flying a Flight Design CTLS, Charlie Tango Lima Sierra for those phonetic geeks. Our friend Ted. Hello, Ted.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Good. Nice to be here.
Awesome. We're glad that you're joining us. We've got an active chat tonight. Glad to see a lot of folks in there. Tonight, we're going to be talking about juggling family and work, mowing the lawn, flying your plane, or learning to fly your plane. How we deal with this stuff as midlifers. So that's what we'll be talking about tonight.
Sounds like juggling the family sounds hard.
I was going to say, you must have a lot of upper body strength.
24, 22, and it was a lot easier when they were much younger. When they were babies, it was baby juggling was a lot easier. Wanted to catch up with you guys. Ted, I want to hear from you first. Brian and I actually saw each other yesterday, and we'll get into that. But
Yeah.
You had a pretty long cross country.
Yeah, I did. So basically, the minute the podcast ended last week, I finished throwing some stuff together, went down and packed the plane, and left at dusk the next morning, and did about 6.5 hours east and south. I went to Boise and Salt Lake, saw my friend in Boise, and literally building a hangar at the Boise airport. So it was fun to fly in and see him literally, just go to Signature and walk next door to the new hangar. They went down to Salt Lake for a couple of days and came back on Friday. So 5.5 hours getting there and 6.5 getting back, I guess. Yeah, it was a good trip.
How many miles was it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't even count miles. I just know it was about 12 hours of flying. So, which means it must be about 1,200 miles, 600 each way. Roughly.
So
not bad.
I'm asking this sincere since I know we get, but you didn't refuel, did you?
I did not refuel on the way back. No. I started with full tanks and things were looking good at the halfway point. So I kept going and still landed with about 2/3 of one of the tanks. So about 1/3 of my fuel was still remaining. So it helps to fly at 10,000 feet.
I was going to say, like, you're in the flight levels, so that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're not, because you are a sport pilot, and also because your plane will not do that.
Yeah,
we know
exactly.
Delta is listening. Let's keep this on the up and up.
That's
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Siskin came down to Rome, Georgia yesterday. It was too pretty of a day not to fly. And I had made this plan from my base airport, which many people know as McCollum, Romeo Yankee Yankee. Cobb County International is the official name. One of my sons was doing a track day on a closed runway up in Rome, Georgia. And Brian reached out to me and said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" I said, "Well, I'm going to fly to this airport and watch my son tear up cars."
Yeah.
And we literally landed within a few minutes of each other too.
Yeah, within 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, almost like we planned it that way.
It worked out really well. Yeah, it was. So your flight was what, 20 or 30 minutes going north?
Yeah, about 25 minutes.
And then for me, it was maybe slightly over an hour, and it was great because coming from the west over the mountains, watching all the fog that was bumped up against the mountains, and then seeing it all break, and then I was 20 minutes out and the field was low IFR, and you were texting me saying the field is IFR. Here's where we're going to go as an alternate or whatever. But I knew I was pretty confident that it would clear up. Which, by the way, is a funny thing, right? That's one of those. If I had 75 hours, I would have been, oh my God, the field's low IFR, even though I feel like it's going to. I don't know. Instead of you just don't worry about it because you know everything's trending in the direction. It's not because of anything other than just fog in the morning and the river and whatever, and it'll clear up.
My question is, if you had 75 hours, would you even taken off if you saw that the field was low IFR?
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, I probably wouldn't have, right? I definitely would not have been like, well, just see how it goes and have a couple of outs. I would have been like, I don't know. This seems bad. But yeah, so it was so cool. And then so I was on Atlanta Center and I heard Ben. I always love it too, because whenever I hear Ben on a frequency, he's always just doing a little bit of chumming it up with the ATC. He's very ATC friendly. And so whenever I hear you on frequency, Ben, it always just stands out, not just because I know your voice pretty well, but also because you're the guy that's like, kind of chumming it up with them. So anyway, I heard you on frequency jump off, and then I got out of there on the CTAF, heard you on CTAF. Then I knew what runway we were going to. And so I was definitely right behind you. I thought that you would film my landing. I thought it was a pretty good one. You didn't film it. Did you see it?
I did see it.
Far away.
I had run inside and then I came back out and
it was over.
I think if you would just look at my YouTube channel and see that there are 3 videos on there over the last 6 years, you would know that I'm not one for filming. So the fact that you're surprised that I didn't film you, it's really on you.
No,
I do want to say too, though, real quick. I've decided I've made a shift. I read the room in the ATC room whether to be chummy or not.
Yeah.
And when he checked in with me, he was pretty chummy.
Yeah.
From the outset. So I was just giving back what I was given. So there are definitely times, especially in the Metro Atlanta airspace, where you need to keep it as brief as possible and,
yes,
be a little bit more businesslike.
I have, so when I was leaving out of Nashville to come there in the morning yesterday, I was, I was on a runway heading out of John Tune to the south, staying under the Charlie and waiting to get on. And sometimes, it takes a minute. So I don't like that period of time where I'm trying to get out from under the shelf or at least to the outer boundary. And I'm having to stay at, 2,300 feet. I just don't, when the MEF is 2,200 and then I don't know, I just don't like it. So I'm always pretty anxious to kind of get on with them. But you're trying to read the room and not, step into the middle of a conversation. And of course, and what was the worst is when it's not terrible, but when you hear like a friendly, prolonged conversation going on, and I'm sitting here just like kind of scud running invisible clouds,
Yeah.
So anyway, I am going south and I hear ATC say, the controller at BNA said to a Southwest jet, hey, Southwest 123, you got time for a quick, and the pilot says, oh yeah, sure. What's up? And the controller says, hey, so we've got one of our guys on your flight this morning going to ATC training for, I guess, radar or something, or I don't know, something. And they said his name is Scott Weckler. Give him a shout out over the PA or whatever, and tell him that we're rooting for him, and all this, and so it was funny. So so that all went down, and then it was my turn, and so I chimed in, and I said I was looking for flight following, and that we're also big fans of Scott Weckler. And he got a kick out of that. But if you guys don't know, listeners, Scott Weckler is a BNA controller that we've had on the podcast with his wife Shelly, who's also a controller, and they're pretty awesome people. So anyway, it was neat to sort of hear that though,
Right.
coming out of there. So
I was wearing my Nashville ATC shirt from him actually yesterday. So
Oh yeah.
he's been on the podcast a couple of times. He helped
Yep.
us when we were doing our Nashville meetup and uh, helped us kind of get bulk flight following. And he's also been on just to talk ATC. So
Yep.
yeah, it's been fun with him.
So
Well,
it was a fun day though
yeah.
in Rome, and it was fun. So my son is on the racing club team. They do
Autocross.
autocross. Thank you. I don't know why I drew a blank on that. And they had a couple of their club cars out there, and they invited the other members to bring their own cars. So Brian and I get to watch cars from a Honda Fit to a
Yeah.
Miata to a Porsche 944, just the widest variety of cars you have ever seen tackle this course.
It was great. So you failed to mention that when we walked up, the first thing we came up to was your
Oh, yeah.
son had just broken the club car on the first run of the day.
Yes.
And the wheel was going one way and the tie rod or whatever was going the other. So
Ball joint came out
yeah.
of the tie rod.
So they were trying to figure all that out, and that was just neat to see their teamwork and how they were all collaborating to fix that problem and working through it. And what an inspiring group of I don't want to say kids, but young people.
They are. You can say that.
I hate. Well, it's not for them. It's not. I don't care about them. It's about me. It just makes me feel it makes me feel old. But no, it was just I was so glad to be there. We had such a good time, and it was so relaxing and just fun to watch. But nothing beat watching this guy just absolutely send a Honda Fit, stock Honda Fit, nothing done to it, just pummeling this thing through the cones, and just the guy wanted to drive more than anybody else there. He was coming back for more and more and more. The other maybe runner up for me was the guy in a stock Toyota Camry.
Yep.
It just, again, these like front wheel drive cars, just understeering it was a joy to watch. So I really enjoyed watching those guys. And Ben, we had lunch at the
I was
place.
going to ask what your impressions of Sam's Burger and Deli. For those of you who don't know, I've seen it on a lot of pilot Facebook groups when they're asking for the $100 hamburger, where to go. And I'm so close to Rome that it really never occurred to me, but I'd heard it time and time again. You need to go check out Sam's Burgers and Deli. So when we pulled up, Brian, what were your initial thoughts?
I thought, is anybody here? And is this sanitary? No, I actually, it was just crazy because it's got the whole front entrance is a jet, and then the side of it's a jet, and then there's a big giant VW Bug with wings and fans for tires, and this kind of dive bomb position with it's got headlights and the whole thing on. I don't know, everything about the outside was so cool, and the inside was impressive as well, and the burgers were great.
The burgers were great. So you're getting 5 stars out of 5 from me. If you're ever in the Southeast and you're passing through North Georgia, stop at Rome, get the courtesy car. It's just a couple minute drive away from the airport.
Totally worth it. Totally worth it. And then we did a couple of low passes for your son and his crew.
A lot of coordination, and what I didn't get to tell you was you took off with really nobody around, but by the time I was ready to take off,
Yeah.
everybody and their brother came in.
I heard that.
There was a guy coming in to land the same runway you took off, and which I ended up on the same runway. And so I had to get pretty creative with my flyby.
Yeah, I heard you on frequency because I was climbing out or about to take off, I guess, and then I heard you say and then as I was climbing out, I heard you just going, all these people were calling in, and then you were just like, well, I'm over here, but I'm just gonna go over to 19 where everybody else is, kind of thing, and then you, I guess, taxied over there.
So yeah, but it was a fun day. It was good to hang out, and appreciate you coming down.
It was awesome, and the weather couldn't have been any better. The flight back was great. It was a perfect day, and you got to make these short days now. You got to. If we're going to be talking about finding time to fly, I mean, it's even harder right now with the daylight being about 3 hours.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into the topic, Brian, why don't you go over our housekeeping?
Yeah, we'll make this pretty quick. You guys know the drill. Yeah, so we're grateful for you all making this the best pilot community we know of. It's a positive space where we share everything from training experiences, shared personal minimums, tackle ownership challenges, review flight plans, and best of all, make new aviation friends. That's right, Ted. Friends.
What?
Yes, it's called hanging out with other people.
No.
Connect with us. You can join our Patreon community from $1 a month. That is 25 cents per episode. That is a postage stamp. A postage stamp, maybe what, like 10 years ago?
Ooh, more than that. Yeah.
More? Yeah. It's a gumball. It's a Coke out of a soda machine in 1979. Access for Patreon. You have exclusive content and our Discord community. 10% of our Patreon we take every month and send it to the Freedom Aviation Network and helping them with their anti-human trafficking efforts. You can volunteer as a pilot, as a non-pilot, or you can donate to them. Watch us live on YouTube Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern. Hello to everybody in the chat. Glad you are here. If you're not here and you're listening, come by next week. We'll be here. Share your stories at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com, and we read all of the messages. And Ben then takes them and puts them in some folder that we can't find them. And then we find them, and then we read them on the show. Sometimes, usually, you might hear it. Sorry, Ben, this is the first you're hearing of that.
Yeah.
Oh, we're
There's like
I
two
can't
levels
make
of
it too
behind the
easy for
scenes.
you. I
Yeah.
mean, it's fine. Y'all want to manage the inbox? Go ahead.
Hey, Ben, if we appreciate your organization. Yeah, no, it's
But
for
not really.
everything Midlife Pilot Podcast, community, feedback, merch, dad hats. Is that one of the dad hats, Ben?
It is.
Yeah.
Affirmative.
Dad hats and more. Visit midlifepilotpodcast.com. Boom.
Yeah. Now I have to break in before I do my segment. 25 cent stamp was 1988 to 1991. That's been a minute. Yeah.
Oh, that
Yeah.
hurts.
So that's why I said it's delightful to know how much that hurts all of us. So we have a bunch of new Patreon supporters this week. I wanted to thank them. So at the Landomatic level, we've got Nikhil N. At the Hershey Bar level, we have Andrew S. and John S., unrelated, but both from England. We have Raymond R., David Y., and Jeremy H., who upgraded from Landomatic. And at the Beast Stole Kit level, we've got Brian S. from Canada. It's another Brian S., another BS, another Canadian. These are all good things.
British invasion. I'm loving it.
I've had a busy week, and our secret extra podcast host, Mr. Wendell Geek, helped me kind of cull some of the threads that were going on in Discord this week. So a couple of those conversations, there was a lot of talk about autopilot versus human pilot. Is it cheating to use your autopilot, etc. Some people have some events starting. Zach started Tailwheel. Cal has their instrument check ride scheduled. Hakan in UK has their private check ride about right now, actually. It may have been a few hours ago, maybe in 12 hours from now. The time zone math is really hard.
They're in the
And it's
future.
it's also weather dependent in the UK. So it may not even happen because of weather. We'll see. And then Mr. Nate Cheapskate was asking about power off scenarios. And what I think is funny is that we do practice kind of power off landings at the end of the right before we turn base. Basically, the engine doesn't stop then. So why does it? Why are we practicing one exact maneuver? And so there was a great discussion about that. So,
Nice.
yeah. So wanted to thank all our Patreons, our new ones and our existing ones. The
Yes.
Discord community has just been really busy. It's been really fun to watch.
It's overwhelming, and we very much appreciate it.
Still kind of find it hard to believe that I haven't driven everybody away over the last, 60 something episodes, but I am really humbled by it. That's for sure. So tonight, it's kind of the heart of what we're all here for, being midlifers and flying. And we thought we'd kind of just hit on a couple of different concepts. Just, you know, most of us, not everybody, but there's a lot of us that have kids. I shouldn't say most, but there's a lot with kids. There's work. We all have different types of jobs. They require different things. So how do we make time? How do we work that into our flying routine? And maybe even more to the point, if you're a student, whether it be private, instrument, or whatever, how do you fit the time in to do that? It obviously gets a lot easier once you get your certificate, but you know, let's kind of take a deep dive into how sharing our experiences, how we carve the time out. Um, so I'm going to start it off and just kind of ask you guys.
Yeah.
The time constraints is probably the number one thing, is probably the most common challenge. Is you have family events, you have work. What do you do to make time for flying? How do you go about doing that?
What I think is interesting about this, at the very top of the sort of funnel of this problem or this challenge, is as midlife pilots, we all had, I would assume in most cases, a full life that we considered probably unmanageable, or at least bursting at the seams for time, prior to then taking on this endeavor. And so to now be in a position where you've got to shoehorn this into an already unsustainable, irrevocably toasted schedule, it is a real challenge for a lot of people. And there is the near term. We talked a little bit, you mentioned a little bit about training, and that's got its own kind of thing. How do you stay focused on the training, intervals that you need to maintain to get it done? And we've talked ad nauseum about all that. Then you get into, you're excited, you've got your certificate. Now I got to make time to fly, but it's pretty easy and fun because it's so new. And then we've talked about how to sustain that interest in that level, and that sometimes this is going to sort of ebb and flow. But then ultimately, a lot of us have bought into planes or are in clubs paying dues. You're committed to a lot of things, even just your subscriptions and ForeFlight and geez, it's like all of like you're in this ecosystem now of kind of taxation that you need to be getting some value out of, but you're now just feeling that pinch of the time upon you. So it's an incredibly common dilemma. So I would say, and then obviously, Ben, you don't want to be in an IPC situation, right? Or, you want to stay current with the things that are most advanced that you're doing. So I would say that, for me, this may sound like kind of a goofy answer based on what I just said, but it's kind of like, if you create a set of circumstances such that it kind of forces you to do it, because you have these subsequent memberships, or you're paying for a plane, or all these things, and the plane's got to fly, and like you're gonna now have to prioritize it more than just based on your will and to fly. And then because of that, it kind of gets you motivated, and then all of a sudden you realize that you're sort of bubbling on this other level, and you have more areas of pursuit in flying. But I would say, with the time constraints, first of all, I understand. And then second of all, I'm not saying trap yourself into flying, but I mean, willfully putting yourself in there, committing to it, I suppose, is a prerequisite on some level. And maybe that's the thing, is it's like your work is a commitment, your family is a commitment, all these things are commitment. Now you've got another commitment, and that's what it is,
Right.
So we'll get into the, a more functional conversation about it, but I just wanted to hit the top level.
Yeah. I think it's definitely true. There's kind of two sides of the door that when you're first walking in through the door, you've got that training time crunch, and realizing that you're not going to be able to fly twice a month and learn how to fly with that. And that's its own thing. We've talked, and lots of people talk about training. The other side of that is, once you've learned and this is part of your life, how do you keep time for that? And also, how do you not have it take over your life if you don't want it to? So those are definitely components in
And
there.
one last point on the training. I think it's different when you're training because you have that goal to complete it. And you're very structured in how you accomplish that goal. And you need to be flying 2 to 3 days a week, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of like when you go to college or you go to high school and you want that diploma, you know that you've got to do A, B, C, and D to get that diploma. It's no different for that. So
Yeah.
we're going to kind of move off the training because, again, you have the motivation to get your certificate. You make that as a priority. And so we really want to talk about what happens after that. What happens now that you have your cert and you can go throw the family in the plane and go away for a weekend if you so choose, or how do you keep the ball going?
Like, I can say one thing that I do that is helpful is, and some of the strategies are going to be different. Some people, it's like and we'll get into some of this, but it's like you can set goals that you're trying to meet on a per month basis. But I mean, ultimately, we're subject to so many variables with weather and planes and all the things. And as we talked about last week, money and time and money seem to be hard to have at the same time. At least in my world, the way things work, I've got one or the other, but never both,
Yeah.
and they're equal and opposite forces. but with on the time front, what I do is I make use of 10-day forecasts, and I have I have an easier time planning in about that window than I do, say, for next month. And so for me, at least, I go 10 days out and I go, okay, where is there a nice, clear, high pressure window of 2 or 3 days that's happening? And how does that work out with my work schedule and some of the other things I have going on? If I can get those things to kind of align, then I'm already limiting the potential for weather cancellations, and really, it's putting myself into a position to have a more successful opportunity to fly, to sort of get that done. If however you want to look at it, I enjoy it. It's not like something we got to get done, but I use 10-day forecasts, and that's how I sort of start my target, and then I have that's just enough of a window to start kind of taking immediate work related things and kind of positioning them around to suit, like, hey, do you want to meet next week and continue this? And it's like, well, can we do that on Tuesday? It's going to be terrible weather, but, and that I would say that starting with the targeting of the time, I think that is how I find, probably the number one way I find time to fly is kind of having a little bit of a pyramid that I'm sort of circumstantially working back from high pressure systems down through my life.
That's a great perspective, and especially for VFR pilots. There's a lot of us in our community that are that way. Ted, I'm curious to hear how you approach it.
Yeah. Uh, I have a couple of kind of conflicts that come into that are a little bit different. But on kind of the largest scale, I kind of look at my life as the number of summers that I have in my life, which is actually kind of devastating when you think about that. And that's a countable number. But because of the weather in the Northwest, winters are very dark, and lots and lots of rain. And so summers are when you really do all the activities. But what I love about that is that it energizes you to go out and take advantage of that in the summer. I've lived, for instance, in San Diego, where it's just perfect year round, and there isn't very much incentive to go out because of that, for me at least. Except to do a little bit of autocrossing down there, of course. But so that kind of sets up my rhythm in my life. And then when it comes to uh, the flying or large flying, right? Not just I'm going to go burn out the pattern for an hour, right? That I can fit in anywhere in the summer. That's an evening after work. It's I'm going down and working on the plane, and I'll just fly a little bit when I'm done, that type of thing. But when it's actually planning and putting in a trip, I will kind of tentatively put it on the calendar and see how that works out. And oftentimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's 50-50 on whether that's going to work out or not. But you just go into it hoping that it's going to work. And if not, it's like, well, I'll just push another weekend and do it, because most of my stuff is weekend based. I also have a constraint that I know Mark Wendell Geek has, which is I share a single car with my partner. So that, especially as someone who goes and gets fuel for their plane, that's definitely a constraint. But I literally will ride the bus to the airport, which is I think is kind of hilarious, and sit there and bicycle to the.
Did they get mad when you've got all this MoGas on the bus?
Exactly. I just don't think there's many people that are bicycling to the bus, riding the bus across town, going into the airport, flying a plane. It's just such a
Taking a bus to an airport just doesn't happen that often. I get it.
multimodal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are all different constraints. And for instance, on this trip where I wanted to be at the airport well before dawn, I just got an Uber to get there. But even that's a hassle, right? You don't always want to do that. There's a lot of factors in there.
It's reminding me that, and I'm sure it's this way in our community, there's people in different parts of the country who are going to deal with different weather phenomena. They're in different points of their pilot journey. For me, it's a lot easier having an instrument rating and having a job that covers a large geographic area. And, I can't say that it requires it, but it becomes very, very handy to have access to an airplane and be able to use it for that. And so it was, for me, my manager says, you need to get out on the road more. And I'm like, don't throw me in the briar patch. Okay. So I'm fortunate in that matter, I guess I should say. I do remember prior to getting my instrument rating, um, you know, I'm the guy that when you learn something new and you get a lot of enjoyment out of it, it's easy for me to cast everything else aside. I mean, kids, what are those things? I don't know. I'm just going to go fly. It's obviously not that, but it's easy to make it a priority when you're getting a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I was a VFR pilot, I've said it on the podcast before, but when I first started training, and as soon as I got my certificate, my dad would say, if Kroger had a runway, I'd use the airplane to go get groceries. Any excuse to fly. But that did change over time. There was a point in time when the airplane was 40 minutes away and not 20 minutes away.
Okay, now Ben, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm cutting you off. So here's the thing. You're saying all this while you also just earlier admitted to us what you did with your fleece, your Midlife Pilot podcast fleece.
I mean, that's part of it. So for the rest of the group, Brian and I had the courtesy car from Rome Airport, and it was chilly in the morning. I had my handy dandy Midlife Pilot podcast fleece, which is available at our merch store, I believe. Is that right,
I was
Ted?
going to say, is it? I'm pretty sure it isn't.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
Write in if
Coming
you
to
want the
a
fleece.
merch
Yeah.
store soon, maybe one day. Anyway, it was really cool. And
If you want one, there's one in Rome, Georgia.
Right. There's one in Rome, Georgia. So I threw it in the back seat. I left it there. And then as I landed at McCollum yesterday, coming back from my trip, I had a choice to make. I could call my son, who was still at the airport. He could go get it. And he lives in downtown Atlanta. And that is an hour drive each way in the best of situations.
Oh.
Or I could go back and take the 25-minute flight. Oh, and by the way, go fly for a little bit, pick up my fleece, and then come back and spend a grand total of an hour and a half from the time I left my house to the time I got back. And that's putting the plane up and doing everything.
Was that today?
That was today. That was this evening.
Yeah.
How
This is
far
so
is that?
funny. So if you're looking to carve out time to fly, just I don't know, leave stuff
Be
places.
forgetful.
there.
Yeah.
It's coming back, making it full circle. It's how we prioritize things. And there's going to be points when I have times of the year, specifically this year, where there's not a lot of travel and work is very busy, and I'm not able to get out that much. And that's just we got to pay the bills. I got to do my job. I got to do it well. So I might have to put flying one more notch down on the priority list.
Well, one thing I love, Ben, is I mean, and you know that I'm a fan of ephemeral vintage aviation films and advertisements and all that stuff. And every sales pitch of the sort of heyday of general aviation in the 50s and the 60s, especially. I mean, the plane that you're in, the plane that I'm in, every one of them, you are one of the sort of trifecta of marketing personas, and I love that that's still in today's world of fake connectedness. The idea that your boss is and you are all about traveling around and the value of face to face, and you are the traveling salesman taking advantage of general aviation and the myriad of general aviation airports, which pays for itself, doesn't it, Ben? Because
The next time we get together, I have a suit that I had tailored. We had a Roaring Twenties themed party for a company, and we had these big oversized suits. So the next time we get together, I'll go sit in the plane and put a cigarette in the mouth and have a bolo, and
Yes.
you just take a picture of it, and we'll see if
That's definitely what's
send it
missing
to
from
Cessna,
that.
see if I can't get it back into their advertising.
love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
that's
I
what's
just love that
missing
whole
from
thing.
the 50s and 60s is smoking the whole time that you're in the plane, right?
I
It's
mean, the
like
plane's got ashtrays,
just
so I
chain
mean,
smoking. Yeah.
we can make that happen. I'll throw a cigar in there and make it happen. But no. But my point is that even though we're saying you need to make flying a priority to stay proficient, to stay current, there's going to be ebbs and flows to that as well. There's going to be times when you're going to have to take care of other things, and we fully realize that.
Well, let me grab some comments here that
Yep.
uh, I've seen scroll past that I love. Banjo Pilot said, tonight's topic resonates with me more than any other episode thus far. I struggle a lot to find the time, and I live about a 5-minute walk from my hangar.
Mm.
Okay, that if you can't handle a 5-minute walk and finding time, you're having trouble finding time, and that's awesome. I wish I was that close. Uh, I'm loving being close enough that I can drive to get something I forgot at the airport rather than wait 2 weeks to go back and grab it. Phoenix Sale said, with the short days, I have to get night current, which is much easier this time of year. That's true. It's almost hard not to be night current right now. And Andy Hilton said they flew 27 hours last month. So that's doing well this time
That's
of
a
year.
busy month.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
The other thing that we have to keep in mind, and there's probably people that are just listening to this on their podcast player, screaming at us, going, "I've got 2 kids. They're 3 and 5 years old, and they're keeping. You know what? They're I I acknowledge that, and quite
Mhm.
frankly, if I had started my flight training when my kids were that age, I'm sure that I would be in the same shoes. I think there's also points in our phases of life where we're afforded more time to go do things. I've worked for my company for 26 years. I've had some success, and they trust me to do my job, and they give me the freedom to do it in the manner in which I see fit. So, and it didn't just happen that way. I built a career out of it. So, hopefully, even if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, and you have a young family, you know what? Stick it out. But there'll be a point in time in the near future where you're given a little bit more freedom?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have had the time or the money to do it when I was younger. It was definitely something that um, once I realized that both those things came together, that I was able to start training. And uh, whether it's young kids or other reasons you don't have time, any reason you don't have money, totally, it's a lot. And that's I think that's kind of this thing about being midlife is it's all of us that should we have done it when we were 20? Probably, but here we are, right? Learning to fly.
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
Well, thank goodness for that, right? A
Yeah,
lot of things we did in those years that would have
yeah,
we tried to do everything to keep ourselves from being here, and yet we are still here in spite of it all. But the other thing too, I think, is that you can't look at this is a long aviation. I think the timeline is a long, hopefully a long timeline in the sense that you have the phase of your training and getting additional ratings and gaining experience and all of those pieces. And then as you settle perhaps into whatever flow that you're in, there's always going to be more to learn. There's always going to be more to achieve. There's always going to be more to do, more places to go. But as a general coexistence of aviation into your life, I think that you'll find over time, I can even say in the 3+ years that I've been doing this, which is not very long, I can already see how over that timeline, what has happened is that it's like a slow modulation of other aspects of life have kind of started to sort of form more neatly around it to where it's in the biorhythm of kind of my life. And so it's not as much a constantly trying to maintain this alien thing to my existence. It slowly over time becomes, I don't know, a part of it. And, the only recommendation I would have, though, that might sound a little controversial is don't add doing a weekly podcast on top of all that.
Now, Brian, what you need is a podcast about how to do the non-flying things in your life, is what you're saying? 'Cause
uh,
the flying
This
is
is
worked
getting too
out.
meta for me. We need to switch it up a little bit there.
yeah, the meta edition, you can get that on our Patreon. It, we have a separate Patreon though for it. It's hard to explain. No, no, but your life adapts in many ways, and the people around you begin to understand more naturally that this is something that you need to do with some frequency to remain safe and current and proficient and all the things. And it's not something that you just fit it in like a golf round or something or whatever. There's a responsibility that you have to have towards it to do it well and to do it safely.
Yeah. And, there's some chat, and we'll talk about maybe the energy management aspect of it now, because Rescue Rat is in our chat, who is a firefighter, and thank you for your service to the community. He is saying, unfortunately, with the state of parking aircraft here in Vegas, my airplane will be over an hour away. But thankfully, as a firefighter working a 48-96 schedule, I typically have 3 consecutive days available for flying. Honeydew list notwithstanding, which for
Yeah.
us married folks, that's got to be withstanding every single time. But that's just one more thing we have to work into the equation. But that brings up a good point, Brian. Also, Fred in the podcast said, or in the chat said, um, early morning flights are great, less crowded, and I have 3 to 4 good diners within a 30-minute flight, so I can often sign in to work before most of my colleagues and get a few hours in.
Yeah,
It,
there were a couple of comments about flying early, especially as the time has changed. And if you want to fly in the light, flying early is maybe your only choice. If you're starting flying at 10, a lot of your day is already gone. And getting used to starting early is definitely one of the great things to do. And to combine that, well, as Fred said about the diners, that is my favorite thing is to go fly to breakfast too. So that works out really well.
yeah, and honestly, I believe your state of mind is better flying in the morning than after having worked a full day and dealing with angry customers or coworkers or whatever the case may be, the stress does kind of mount up, and you're probably a little bit better off approaching it with a clear mind in the morning than you would be in the afternoon anyway. So, and I personally, and this was mentioned earlier in the chat, I can't remember who it is, but I love this time of the year just to keep my night proficiency going. It's a lot easier to do it. If you go in July, you're taking off at 10 o'clock at night or later, and now you can knock it out and be home by 10 o'clock.
You can be home by 6 around here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's even better for you.
Yeah.
Are there any so Ted, you're very savvy with a lot of these things. Are there any life hacks or apps or tools or tricks or things that you have found that save you any kind of time that you can put towards aviation?
Yes. A really big thing for me is this thing called Google Calendar.
Mm.
And that is pretty much my life. Between me and my partner scheduling things out. That's all it takes. It really helps me, at least, just to be able to block off time, right? You were
Yeah.
talking about looking for those high pressure times. High pressure weather times. And if you've got the time blocked off in your calendar, it's a lot easier when you're scheduling to say no to the meeting or the weekend or whatever it is, and keep that open for those types of things. For me, that's kind of a big part of it.
I use Google Calendar. I give myself a reminder the first of every month. Angel Flight has a great app, and their missions are scheduled out a month in advance. So I put a reminder in my Google Calendar to pick a mission. I try to fly one a month, and that's committing time on the calendar. So that's another method of trying to block it out.
Do you try to do one a month, or it just happens that way?
I consciously try to do one a month.
Okay.
And if I get too busy with work or something, I'll do 2 in one. I'll try to do 12 a year, basically.
Yeah.
That's the goal. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
Oh, we got Nathan Ballard in the chat. What's Nate saying here?
Here, I'll read that. Nathan says, on the macro level, I had a hard time finding time to fly for 25 years due to life and family. But now I see getting away to fly isn't being selfish, it's healing and makes me a better partner and dad.
Mm.
And Ben, that goes to, is it your phrase or is it your wife's phrase?
What do you mean?
Air therapy.
Oh, that's mine.
But
she's adopted it. She will tell me to get the heck out of the house and do better flying when it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
She knows that's the way to put myself in a better mood.
Hey, by the way, Ben, your flight today to go get your jacket.
Are you laughing at me, near me, or with me?
Yes.
Why not all the above? Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so funny. And your son was on the other side of the airport. He could have gotten this. You just used the whole thing as an excuse to be like, you know what? Got to fly on Monday too. Yep. See, so
I'm
that's
trying to see what the problem is with that, Brian. I mean,
there's not. This is just being a little bit more transparent about your tactics, so that we can help our listeners understand that if you are deceitful to yourself and others, you can also get some more flying time in. And
there's a show title in there somewhere.
Yeah, if you're not lying to yourself, you're not flying.
Fear of self-loathing in flying, or something to that effect.
Well, what I want to say though is that today I wanted to say on the air therapy front, because I flew today as well, briefly on an errand, right, to just take the plane back to the hangar, because I had it down here for a couple days. And I love the little flight, 50-mile flight from John Toon to Bowling Green. It's so relaxing. And I was just wondering, after the flying you did yesterday and the other flying you've done, isn't there something about these little sort of errand kind of non-flight flights that are almost better than anything else, because it feels like gravy to just the flying experience?
It is. I actually was thinking about it on the flight back. when you do an angel flight, or you're doing any long cross country for that matter, you're putting a lot of energy into weather planning, route planning, getting your head straight for talking with ATC. You're getting in. I get into this mode. It's like I'm in now pilot mode. I know the weather. I am the route. This is what I'm going to expect. Atlanta's going to give me this arrival, departure, whatever. It is awesome to be able to just say VFR departure to the northwest, and I'm going to go to 3,500 feet, and that's it. That's all I got to. This is the runway I'm going to land on. The way I equate it is if you've been running marathons for most of your life, and then somebody says, "Hey, I need you to go run a 5K."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
just
it's like
you're
I
like,
know this airport. I know the direction I'm headed. I can do this all visually. This is easy. Yeah.
yeah.
I want to grab a
So,
couple of comments, and then we've got some other feedback we're gonna
yep.
we're gonna play. Talking about the air therapy. Grizzly said, "Oh yeah, sometimes I'll be grumpy, and my wife will ask, when was the last time you flew?' I like that." Uh, and Fred said, "I know I watch a lot less Netflix since I started flying 3 years ago. Flying is so much more rewarding."
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yep.
Now
That's awesome.
we've got some feedback to play that I haven't even heard, so I need somebody else to introduce it.
So we mentioned earlier new Patreon members. We had two that came in that live in England. I'm not sure where. Doesn't matter. They're across the pond. And one of us sent us some audio feedback, which we would like to promote more of. So it's from John, and he had a really nice message. It really, really was nice.
Cool. Yeah, John S. Here we go.
Well, I finally did it. I made it to episode 101. I have been binging this podcast from the beginning. A little bit about me. My name is John Schwab, if you need to know the full name. I am a midlife pilot. I'm 52 years old, got about 92 and a half hours. I'm a PPL holder, just kind of hour building at the moment, really, to get onto that experience that I need, really, where I feel like I'm going to, carry on. I'll get my night rating next. Maybe it's the winter coming up here, and then I'll carry on learning. But I'm a midlifer, like you all. I fly out of Echo Golf Kilo Romeo, which is a little aerodrome to the north of Gatwick. The airspace around where we fly is insanely busy, and this aerodrome has 4 runways. The longest, I think, is about 850 meters. It's like 2,500 feet. The one we use in the winter is 495 meters by 10 meters. And my instructors tell me if I can land there with a 12-knot crosswind, I can land anywhere and live, is what I meant to say. But yeah, what a wonderful place to fly at. I really enjoy it. I come from a long line of aviators. My father was a fighter pilot during the Vietnam War era. He flew F-4s, and my grandfather flew F-4 Corsairs in World War II. I didn't go into the military. I instead fly Pipers. I don't know when I'll be able to join the podcast live, because it'll be like 1 o'clock in the morning for me. But I love this podcast. I love this community. I've had serious FOMO. And being an American living in London and hearing these accents on this podcast makes me so happy. I've loved listening to the originals, Chris and Brian, and then moving on to Ben and Ted, and then all the guests, CFII extraordinaire, Nathan, and One Dull Geek, and it's a fantastic community, and there's some serious FOMO going on. So I'm happy to join. I'm happy to be a Patreon member. I'm happy to see the content, and I'm looking forward to the Discord discussions that I keep hearing on the episodes and never know what really is going on. I love to see that happen. Anyway, what an incredible and I'm blowing sunshine, guys. I know that I'm blowing sunshine. But it is an incredible community. I have loved every single one of these podcasts. I come to it so late. You guys started the podcast when I started training, and it's just after, actually, and I just feel gutted that I didn't pick up on it. and it's only in the last few months. And I have been binging them. I've been doing 2, 3 a day, um, and over the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, just to get myself up to speed. This is a long, rambling message, but I just want you to know that I'm happy to be supporting you. I'm live now, and keep up the good work. And I hope to be a valuable part of this community and celebrate my accomplishments as well as other people's on this podcast and this Discord channel and this wonderful, wonderful group you built. Looking forward to you guys. Thanks.
That's so great.
What a great voice.
Yeah. I've
So
got to
my
say,
initial response was he could replace me any given moment. He's got a better voice,
Yeah,
cadence, everything.
more articulate than us.
Yes.
We should just send him a transcript, and then he can actually act out all of our voice parts because he's a voice actor.
I think we need to, it's terrible when people have FOMO. And I think we need to probably resolve that. And maybe we just go over there and record a live episode in England.
Let's do that. And then
throwing that
also
out
in the
there.
meantime, what I would really like, as much as it seems terrible to ask John for more after such an incredible, beautifully articulated comment, I would also just love, and Ted, I feel like you would feel the same way. I'm not sure about Ben, but what if John gave us his best Ben impression? Because he's talking about the accents, right, and how it sort of it's bringing him back home, you know. So if he can embody the Ben drawl,
I'd
man.
love to hear that.
Yeah.
oh,
I absolutely
voice
would love
actor.
to hear it.
He reminds me, his voice reminds me a little bit of Nate Ballard. I hear some of that same voice. So I wrote down two things. One is blowing sunshine is certainly something I'd take right now over here. We just have blowing rain. And the other thing is he was giving the dimensions of his runway, and that would be 35 feet by 1,600 feet. So that's
doing a 10-knot crosswind in that
with a crosswind. Yeah, that's legit.
Their instructors are right. He can land just about anywhere.
Yep.
We're going to start wrapping up, but I do want to mention Curly J's good comment here. New intro, real voice. So maybe
John's already getting
we
hired
can
for
pay
a lot of
him
things.
to do that, or pay him in kind and somehow. But anyway, just to recap, it's all about priorities and trying to make the time possible whenever you can. Take advantage of things when you can. Of getting up in the air and make the most of it. We're all here because we love it, and want to also remind everybody you can engage with us. You can send us an email at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website at midlifepilotpodcast.com, and links to all the things, Patreon, merch store are there. Gentlemen, anything else for the good of the order? Anything I'm missing on the recap?
No, I think you've done it perfectly, Ben.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And now we have something that we can offer everyone to give them more time to fly, and that is ending this episode.
Want to thank everybody in the chat. It's been a really great group tonight.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you. Remember, you can join us on Monday nights, usually at 8 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/@midlifepilotpodcast. Since Brian and Ted look to off mic, they kind of come back to me and say, when there's a disagreement on how something should be handled, I'm kind of the father figure. They tell me I'm the one that has to settle things. So I've made a decision. I'm going to start wrapping up every episode with a thought of the week or some advice. And I am prepared for the next 2 years to do this as it stands right now. But given tonight's topic, this has been said before on the podcast, but this one came up and I thought it was, it's been credited to John Lennon, but I don't think he's the original source. But life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. And that I felt was apropos for tonight's subjects. So signing off, episode 103 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Thank you, everybody. Good night.